Wayne, go ahead. Good to have you with us.
Hi, Alex. Good to be with you.
Good to have you here. Okay, break down Copenhagen, break down your take on healthcare, and then I want to get your take on Russia saying they may engage in preemptive war now because of NATO and U.S. policy. Wayne Madsen.
Well, certainly with this Copenhagen thing has turned into basically a three-ring circus, and I think a lot of people who went over there who had justified fears that wherever they came from in the world, whether it was low-lying South Pacific islands or in the Andes where the glaciers are disappearing and the water is becoming scarcer, they all went to Copenhagen thinking something good was going to happen. They're looking there now and seeing George Soros, Hillary Clinton with billions of dollars at stake, this carbon exchange program that looks, it's something like, I think the carbon exchange is something Bernie Madoff is now wishing he, was out of prison and involved with. He's probably kicking himself.
Well, Ken Lay did invent it. I mean,
right. And so, what do all these people? What have they encountered in Copenhagen? But police tear gassing them, arresting them en masse, just like we saw at the anti-G8 meetings, just as we saw it at Davos and other places where these same people get together. And I think many people who are, members of Greenpeace, Sierra Club, World Wildlife, people, concerned about the environment and the climate are looking and saying, what in the world is this mess? And, to see their supporters, people from indigenous areas around the world being arrested en masse. You've got Hugo Chavez going to Copenhagen, Evo Morales of Bolivia, Daniel Ortega of Nicaragua. They're looking at their fellow countrymen being arrested, and they're shaking their heads, and they're looking around. Who do they see? They see the usual suspects. Obama, I'm surprised Tony Blair, he probably wanted to be there, but he may be facing war crimes charges soon. He tried to run for president of Europe, and he lost that. But it's that same crowd. They're looking around at these people who you see at all these various global meetings, and they're shaking their heads. They said, I'm sure they're thinking, this isn't a double cross. This is really like a triple cross.
That's right. They suckered the third world and said, you're going to get a bunch of loot from the West. They show up, they get the actual treaty, and it says they've got to make right at double the carbon cuts the West does, and the money's not even paid to the UN. It's paid directly to the World Bank and the IMF. I mean, right. That is a bold fraud.
Right. And then you have Soros over there talking about special drawing rights, trying to get his hands into the IMF money. And, anytime you see Soros involved with anything, run for the exit because somebody's going to have their pocket picked pretty liberally. And but he's not certainly the only one. It's, just this whole crowd. Ban Ki-moon, the UN Secretary General, he's not liked by a lot of the smaller countries, the developing countries. They know he's a proxy for the United States and the U.S. allies and the banking sector. And like I say, people are just shaking their heads in Copenhagen saying and then they're looking at Obama with the Nobel Peace Prize, Bernanke getting Time Person of the Year. It doesn't take these people very much for this.
This is like Kurt Vonnegut's satire.
Exactly. This is something out of the Bizarro world on Superman.
It really is insane. So what do you see coming out of this? An agreement to agree? Because Obama's saying he doesn't care if the world doesn't sign on. And we're going to play the speech later. He's saying he's going to go ahead and pledge the money to the World Bank to then give loan sharking rate loans to the third world. That's their assistance. The third world's already learned about that assistance.
Well, I think what we're going to see is basically gridlock out of Copenhagen. There'll be some kind of motherhood apple pie statement. People will smile and say they agreed to it, but there'll be a lot of world leaders leaving there, especially those from Africa, Latin America, South Pacific, Asia, shaking their heads and saying this isn't what we expected. This was typical of these big countries, the Western countries, and I think then we'll probably hear about some future meetings somewhere, and we'll get a lot of propaganda about, I don't know where it'll be, and it may be some other city. We've already seen them in Kyoto and Jakarta. They'll probably pick out some other city, and this is going to probably become like the Olympics. Everybody's going to try to get this climate change conference to make some money.
Shifting gears to the war, for those that don't know, maybe give them some background. Of course, the Downing Street memo, the White House memo, it's confirmed that Blair and Bush knew there were no WMDs. It's not that they screwed up and were wrong. They lied premeditatedly. They wanted the oil. They wanted the weapon sales. They wanted to box in Iran and China and Russia and get their set pieces in there for future conflicts like 888 that blew up in their face, thank God. But now more is coming out that Blair knew it was premeditated. And so there's talk of war crimes charges against him. Obama is expanding the war. I mean, this is what is the rest of the world saying about this?
Well, I think what we're seeing with Tony Blair, he's now going to be testifying before the Chilcot inquiry in London. We've seen already some testimony that's pretty explosive out of there, saying that Blair, of course, knew there was no WMDs, decided to go to war against Iraq anyway. Preemptive warfare is against the Nuremberg, what we got out of the Nuremberg trials. It's a war crime. And I think we're going to see greater calls for Tony Blair to be prosecuted in The Hague. And if that happens, Mr. Bush and Mr. Cheney and Mr. Rumsfeld better watch out, because they may be, in fact, next. Blair may set a precedent. Now, Blair's going to be testifying in public, we understand, and it'll be very interesting to hear what he has to say. But obviously he's been caught. He's been caught with his pants down on this one. Now, he may try to get out of it by saying, he wanted to be a good ally to George Bush. And if that happens, then, of course, the onus will shift to Mr. Bush and Mr. Cheney.
And notice they've been hiding out. You never see them anymore.
Yeah, Cheney was kind of active with his mouth a few months ago, but I noticed he's working on his memoirs, supposedly, and they're going to be out apparently in 2011. But he's probably spending a lot of time at his nice home over on the eastern shore of Maryland, or out at his private country club community in Wyoming. Or
he's in the Darth Vader egg.
Right. Well, he also has a big house he built right near the CIA headquarters in McLean, Virginia. But he's probably being the artful dodger. He's probably going between the various homes. So in case there is any Interpol arrest warrant put out, he's probably going to be pretty hard to nab.
I don't think they're going to let Interpol go after Lord Cheney. But in closing, Wayne Madsen, I want to get into health care. Now, folks, I've been telling people since we got the first versions of these bills 5-6 months ago, there's been, more than 10 versions now. Every one of the versions was written, and their lobbyists have bragged to the Wall Street Journal, the head lobbyist for the healthcare industry and the other head lobbyists, because they have consortium leaders for the insurance companies, said, we wrote this bill.